Welcome to this explainer. We're going to talk about something fascinating today. A system of control that's built on rules you never even agreed to, and a contract you never actually signed. And the craziest part? It's all hidden in plain sight, tucked away inside provider agreements.
I mean, think about that for a second. How can you be legally bound by rules you never put your name to? It sounds impossible, right? But that's the core of the system we're going to unpack today. It all kicks off with a document that, on the surface, looks like a simple partnership, but it's really a doorway to something much, much bigger. All right, so let's dive in. The best way to think about this is with that classic iceberg metaphor. You know the one. Because with these agreements, what you see, what's above the water, is just a tiny, tiny fraction of what's really going on underneath.
So every single one of these relationships starts with a contract. And it seems totally straightforward, right? It's a document you read, you agree to it, you sign on the dotted line. It's all designed to make you feel like you're entering a real partnership.
But here's the catch. That contract is just the tip of the iceberg. Underneath the surface, there's this massive, sprawling document. Some places call it a handbook, others a provider guide. Honestly, the name doesn't really matter. What matters is that its size and its scope just absolutely dwarf that simple little contract you signed. And when you put them side by side, the difference is just crystal clear. The contract, you sign it. The handbook? Nope, never signed. The contract has fixed terms, but the handbook, well, that can be changed pretty much whenever they want. One makes you feel like a partner, the other just loads you up with binding obligations. And this is where that power dynamic shifts big time. Okay, so the big question is, how does this document you never even signed become so incredibly powerful? The answer is, well, it's a very clever, very specific legal trick. See, buried deep inside the fine print of the contract you do sign, there's a little clause that looks something like this. And this is from a real agency document, by the way. It says, the handbook is part of the agreement. And just like that, boom, you're legally on the hook for every single word in a massive document you might not have even known existed. The fancy legal term for this is incorporation by reference, and it is a seriously powerful tool. What it means, in simple terms, is that all the rules, all the regulations, all the obligations in that huge, separate handbook, they all become legally part of your contract just because they were mentioned once. No new signature, no second look, nothing. So, what's actually in these handbooks? Let's take a look. Because this is where the vague, general language of the contract gets transformed into a super detailed, day-to-day rulebook that governs pretty much every aspect of a provider's life and work. And I mean, we are talking incredibly detailed instructions here. Stuff like your daily conduct, specific standards for how you communicate, exact instructions for documentation, even down to specific house rules, and, get this, pre-written algorithms for how to handle certain situations. It's basically a complete operations manual for your life. You know, when you put it all together, it looks, walks, and talks exactly like a job description for an employee. But here's the thing. The system insists, absolutely insists, on calling the provider an independent contractor. And that right there, that's the central contradiction of this whole setup. And this control doesn't just stop at work either. It goes deep into the provider's private life. For example, the agency has to approve anyone new who wants to live in the home. They can come into the house with just 24 hours notice. A provider has to run anything by them that could be seen as a conflict of interest. And it's not just a provider, everyone in the household has to follow the agency's standards. And on the professional side, the control is just absolute. The provider has to follow any and all directions from the agency. Any training courses the agency thinks are necessary, yep, they're mandatory. And this one is wild. All the documents about the individual you're caring for, they're considered the legal property of the agency. But you know, nowhere is this power imbalance clearer than when you look at the termination clauses. The provider, the person who has literally built their life around this arrangement, has to give 90 days notice if they want to leave. The agency, they only need 30. It's just a stark, completely one-sided power dynamic laid out in black and white. And if you think that's bad, hold on, because there is one more layer to this. And honestly, it might be the most powerful tool they have in this whole structure. The agency's right to change the rules whenever they want. It comes down to a simple sentence, something you'll find buried in these handbooks. It says something like, updates and revisions will be provided to you as needed. As needed? I mean, who decides what's needed? The agency does, of course. That one little phrase gives them a blank check to change the rules of the game at any time. And the process for doing this? It is brutally efficient. Step 1, the agency decides to change a rule. Step 2, they update the handbook. Step 3, that new rule is now automatically instantly binding on the provider. It's really that simple.
And just think about how this happens. There's zero negotiation, the provider doesn't sign anything new, there's no extra pay for any new duties or responsibilities, and the agency takes on no new liability for themselves. It is the absolute ultimate expression of one-way power.
So what's the big picture here? What does all of this add up to? Well, when you piece it all together, you start to see that this isn't just a collection of weird rules. It's a deliberately designed system. It's what you could call an architecture of dependence.
That initial contract, the one you sign at the very beginning, it serves one very specific purpose. It's there to create the appearance of independence, to make it look like a fair business-to-business partnership. It just sets the stage.
But the handbook? The handbook does the exact opposite. With all its tiny, detailed rules, its sneaky legal power, and that ability to be changed on a whim, it systematically creates a state of total dependence.
And what you're left with is this incredibly stark division. On one side, you have the provider, who carries all the day-to-day workload, all the personal investment, and pretty much all of the practical risks. And on the other side, the agencies, and they hold all the power.
Which of course leads to a really profound and kind of unsettling question. In a system where all the risk is on one side and all the power is on the other, who's actually responsible when things go wrong? The lines of accountability just get completely, dangerously blurred.
And really, that's the main takeaway here. As long as the real rules, the ones that truly matter, remain hidden away in these unsigned, constantly changing handbooks, this whole situation of pseudo-independence is just going to be the norm. And you have to understand, this isn't a mistake. It's not an oversight from one or two agencies. This is the architecture of the system.